This is part 3, episode 113. However, a 1,000-year spirit and a 10,000-year spirit are obviously more useful than a 100-year spirit. Through my conversation with the soul masters and the spirits, I realized that a 1,000-year spirit with 2 soul skills can fuse with a soul master. However, after fusion, its first soul skill can fuse with its soul master as well. In other words, the soul master can use another soul skill, exactly as if he had gained another soul ring. This soul skill can be used by the spirit itself as part of its fighting skills. The other soul skill will be hidden in the spirit's body. If a soul master's cultivation reaches the bottleneck of the next rank, the spirit can unleash its soul skill to be the soul master's next soul ring. The precondition is that the soul master must accept it. From my perspective, it is highly likely that soul masters will accept it, because their spirit can only unleash the soul rings that it gives them. This will further strengthen his spirit and compensate for the disparity between this soul ring and a higher ranked one. At the same time, the higher the rank of that soul ring, the harder it will be to obtain it, and more difficult to find one that is suited for himself. Hence, why doesn't he just use the soul skill the spirit can give him? To many soul masters, this is not a hard choice. When it comes to 10,000-year spirits, they are even more useful for a soul master. First of all, the biggest benefit of a 10,000-year spirit is that they are sentient. While it is harder to fuse with one, once completed, their intelligence will enable them to fuse their own fighting abilities with their soul masters, greatly benefiting the latter. In a fight, the spirit will be part of the soul master's fighting abilities, and that's without it even providing a soul skill. A 10,000-year soul beast, according to its cultivation, can provide between 3 and 4 soul skills for its soul master, who has the option to choose. In comparison, a soul master can only depend on luck when fusing with a soul ring. Furthermore, when one obtains a 10,000-year spirit, when one already has 6 rings, one will choose the soul ring the spirit brings along with it when they add a 7th ring. This will ensure that the soul skill will be implanted into the spirit, giving the spirit an additional ability. For soul masters, this is tantamount to obtaining a 10,000-year soul ring. A soul master's 7th soul skill is his martial soul true body, which does not carry a soul skill with it. This is something that perplexes us soul masters, especially because of the benefits of a 7th soul ring. By giving the 7th soul skill to one spirit, this problem will be eliminated. Even if a soul master cannot use the soul skill himself, it will still benefit him greatly. This is equivalent to having one extra soul skill. How great is that? Hui Yu Hao described it very clearly, and the humans and soul beasts who heard him all nodded. On the soul master's side, many eyes gleamed. These powerful soul masters were all thinking how their disciples' fighting styles would change after they had obtained their spirits. As the first batch of test subjects, they were already ahead of their time. Di Qian said, "These benefits are good. The problem now is, what's the success rate of the soul masters forming these contracts themselves? If we can't resolve this problem, no matter how good spirits are, all they will bring to us soul beasts is more harm." Hui Yu Hao nodded and said, "I've considered this problem. What I can be sure of now is that if they try to fuse with 100-year soul beasts, the success rate will be similar to mine. However, if they try it with 1,000-year soul beasts, or 10,000-year soul beasts, the success rate will drop visibly. However, this may not always be the case. In signing a contract with a soul beast and completing the spirit transformation, a very important point is the spiritual power of the soul master involved. When the soul beast and the soul master are both willing, his spiritual power is extremely important. Hence, there's one situation which is highly beneficial to the spiritual fusion process. Not only can it greatly increase one's chance of success, but it will also benefit the soul master immensely. Oh, there's such a way. What is it? Dubuzi the body Doluo asked. From his tone right now, he did not treat Hui Yu Hao as his junior, but instead as his equal. Hui Yu Hao said, "The soul master has to delay obtaining his next soul ring. Let me give an example. When a 4-ringed soul ancestor's soul power reaches rank 50 under normal circumstances, he will try and obtain another soul ring to become a 5-ringed soul king, right? When he obtains his soul ring, the most powerful one he can obtain is a 10,000-year soul ring. He can't obtain one that is 20,000 years or more. I won't go into details, but everyone's following me, right?" The many powerful humans all nodded. Hui Yu Hao said, "So what if he doesn't try and fuse with his soul ring at this moment? What will happen?" 10,000 years ago, the Grandmaster of Shrek Academy told us in his research into the 10 core forces of the Soul Master world that soul power will continually accumulate until the Soul Master has obtained his next soul ring, before it will burst out. In other words, if one continues cultivating, one's soul power will continually increase, but it won't reveal itself. For many soul masters, they cannot bear such a delay. After all, by obtaining a soul ring, one's soul power will increase tremendously, which is also accompanied by an improvement in the quality of the soul master's strength. However, if a soul master does not obtain a soul ring at this moment and continues cultivating, he will not only improve his soul power, but also his spiritual power. For a normal soul master, his spiritual power will increase along with his soul power. The more he cultivates, the more he meditates, the stronger his spiritual power will be. If his soul power can be suppressed for a while, and he is given more time to improve, his spiritual power can fulfill the criteria easily when he fuses with his spirit. At the same time, this kind of training will make a soul master more stable and resilient, traits which are important when it comes to spiritual fusion. The success rate will thus naturally increase. Even without me, the contract can be completed. In an optimal situation, if a 4-ringed soul master can increase his soul power to rank 60 before obtaining a spirit, I can guarantee that his success rate, even if it's with a 10,000-year spirit, will be more than 80%. Once it's done, he can obtain 2 10,000-year soul rings, which will allow his strength to increase massively. Dubuzi nodded non-stop. The conditions that Hu Hao were laying out could definitely be met. In his body sect, there were soul masters who cultivated like this. For some of the more anxious and gung-ho disciples, he would purposely deny them their soul rings so that they could improve their personality. Elder Xian said, "Your contract seems very difficult. How long will it take to master?" Hu Hao said, "I've considered this, too. I believe that it's not ideal for everyone to learn it. Once someone knows how to make a contract, a soul master will find it hard to resist the temptation of finding a spirit. They will go and search for soul beasts, and the process of spiritual fusion is extremely difficult. Once it fails, the soul beast will be injured, and the soul master will not escape unscathed either. It's best for someone like me to facilitate the process as an outsider. This maximizes the success rate and prevents either side from getting hurt. Furthermore, the conductor will also be able to bear a portion of the pressure placed on the soul master. This will make the contract process a lot easier." Elder Xian frowned and said, "You are just one person. Will you help everyone?" Hu Hao said confidently, "Of course I can't do it alone. However, I believe that there are some people who are competent enough." This aroused Di Qian's interest, and he asked Hu Hao, "What kind of people?" Hu Hao replied, "Soul masters with spiritual type martial souls like me. Normally, they will cultivate their spiritual power. The more powerful their spiritual power is, the stronger their martial soul be. Hence, in terms of spiritual power, even a 3-ringed soul elder will have greater spiritual power than a normal soul emperor. With spiritual type soul masters as the middleman, the chance of success will naturally be higher. Furthermore, after they learn the contract process from me, it will increase their chances even more. While there are not many soul masters with spiritual type martial souls, they are still a significant portion of the population. However, there are only a few spiritual type soul beasts, so it's hard for them to become strong. If we can gather them, I'll train them and guarantee that afterward, the success rate of a spiritual fusion mediated by them will reach 70% or more. The specific success rate will depend on the spiritual cultivation of the soul master. By then, I will have divided them by their cultivation. Those with more powerful spiritual power will help the higher-ranked spirits and soul masters, and those with less powerful spiritual power will fuse the 10-year and 100-year spirits with lower-ranked soul masters. This will help to increase the chances of success." "This makes sense," agreed Dubuzi promptly. Yu Hao's words make sense. Xianzi and I share the same opinion. The contract is rather complicated, and not something that an ordinary soul master can master. Furthermore, as one makes the contract, it will drain one of their spiritual power. With a bunch of people dedicated to facilitating the contract process, the success rate will be higher. Those who possess spiritual type martial souls are the best candidates. Good idea. We can try it once we get back. I have some soul masters like the ones you've described in my body sect. Let me tell you now that the body sect will learn from Shrek Academy." Hu Hao said nothing, but smiled faintly. Elder Xian's mouth twitched as he said, "Old poison, you sure know to benefit yourself. Hu Hao is the only one who can administer the contract. You now plan on learning the skill for yourself." Dubuzi laughed heartily and said, "Isn't that great? We'll be saving Yu Hao the trouble of traveling everywhere. Shrek Academy has already guaranteed that they will publicize this contract." Elder Xian frowned and turned to Hu Hao. Hu Hao seemed to have expected this situation to appear a long time ago, and Dubuzi wasn't the only one to have such thoughts. The other powerful individuals from the various sects and academies were all very interested in his contract. Hu Hao smiled faintly and said, "You don't have to worry, elders. I have a suggestion for that. First, we have to split the process into several steps. For the first step, everyone will have to send someone from your respective sects and academies who has at least 3 soul rings and is a spiritual type soul master to Shrek Academy, so that we can conveniently train everyone together. Since Shrek Academy has promised to release the method of contracting spirits to the public, we will not go back on our word. Every powerful Soul Master's face began to sparkle when he said those words. Their heads bobbed up and down, and their eyes were as friendly as could be as they stared at Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao said, but... Everyone's eyes focused. They stared at him quietly. From their perspective, Hui Yuhao definitely had some conditions to fulfill. However, even if he proposed certain conditions in favor of Shrek Academy or for himself, everyone could only agree so that they could have contracts with spirits. In the end, spirits could be considered something that would change the course of history for the development of Soul Masters in the future. Whoever could be ahead of everyone could develop one step faster than everyone else. Who was willing to give that up? Hui Yuhao continued, but we need to have rules. First, the contract between Soul Masters and Soul Beasts must be established on the foundations of mutual willingness. Our rationale for researching spirits from the beginning wasn't so that we could boost the strength of Soul Masters even further. Rather, we researched spirits so that we could reduce the number of Soul Beasts we have to kill, and so that we can reduce the conflict between humans and Soul Beasts. Both humans and Soul Beasts are a part of the continent, and we are all part of the balance of life. Killing Soul Beasts excessively will move humans closer to our own extinction in the future. Therefore, I have to ask everyone to remember this point. Everyone that Hui Yuhao was facing were powerful titled Doluo, but Hui Yuhao wasn't timid at all. His face was very solemn and serious when he said those words. The group of powerful individuals tilted their heads slightly. They were all substantially important people in the world of Soul Masters, and they were very clear about a future where the number of Soul Beasts in the continent was greatly diminished, and where top-tier Soul Beasts were few and far between. Therefore, even though Hui Yuhao's words seemed a little simple compared to the benefits that spirits would bring, they were still moved by his words. Hui Yuhao continued, therefore, because of our original intentions, we cannot let the fusion of spirits spread unchecked. All kinds of circumstances will arise if that happens, and spirits will turn from a good thing into a bad one. Thus, I suggest that we establish an organization specifically for the fusion of spirits and the contracts involved. This organization will help reconcile humans and Soul Beasts, and we will fix dates to execute fusions with spirits. Form an organization. What kind of organization do you want to establish? Dubuzi asked doubtfully. Hui Yuhao answered, this organization's main function will be to supervise and take charge of the contract between Soul Beasts and Soul Masters. At the same time, only spiritual type Soul Masters, who belong to this organization, can be taught the method of conducting this contract. These spiritual type Soul Masters cannot withdraw once they join. The group of titled Doluo couldn't help but draw a cold breath when they heard his words. They were all intelligent people, and they understood what kind of immense strength this organization that Hui Yuhao was suggesting they establish would possess when it was developed. The director who controlled all this would control all sources of spirits. Everyone knew how practical spirits were, and this was definitely the direction that Soul Masters would pursue in the future. Under such circumstances, if an organization controlled everything to do with spirits, how great would their power over Soul Masters be? This organization will belong to Shrek. Dubuzi spoke his doubts without hesitation. If this organization was in Shrek Academy's hands, then Shrek Academy would no longer be the #1 academy in the world, they would skyrocket to become the #1 entity in the world. Hui Yuhao shook his head and smiled, don't worry, elders. Shrek doesn't have this ambition. This organization will belong to everyone, and it will be managed by everyone. My suggestion is for all 3 empires to choose several sects and academies, who will send out their representatives, and Shrek Academy will also send out our representative, and we will come together to form a conference hall for this organization. Every decision that this organization has to make in the future will have to go through this conference hall. As for the rules after joining this conference hall, they will be up to you, elders, and the 3 empires to determine. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief when they heard his words. Elder Xian smiled faintly, but he didn't speak too much from the beginning to the end. This organization had been something that Hui Yuhao, Yang Shaozhe, and the others had considered when they first began their research on spirits. If this organization wasn't monitored and checked, its strength would spread unchecked. There were too many tricks and schemes that humans could use against Soul Beasts, and who could predict how this organization would change in the future. Therefore, certain regulations were necessary for executing the equal contracts. However, this wasn't something that Shrek Academy could control on their own. If Shrek Academy was the only one controlling this organization, perhaps Shrek Academy's strength would swell rapidly in the short term, but when that happened, they would become the entire Doluo continent's enemy. Shrek Academy's strength would arouse the envy of others. Therefore, this organization could only belong to all 3 empires and Shrek Academy at the same time. The Academy seemed to be at a disadvantage in this agreement, but Shrek Academy only had their own city behind them, and their academy was being lifted to the same status as the other 3 empires. So this was considered a success for the academy. Furthermore, Shrek Academy was the one who had done all that research on spirits, so the three empires had nothing to say. They would feel they were taking advantage of Shrek Academy. Under such circumstances, nobody would object. Careful discussions and negotiations would have to take place in the future to determine how this organization would be monitored and managed. Di Qian had been listening quietly from one side this entire time, and a smile appeared on his face as Hu Yuhao finished his speech. Di Qian began to clap for Hu Yuhao. Supervise, this word is great. I hope you humans can achieve that. I think Yuhao is right. Soul masters contracting spirits by themselves is almost impossible, and no matter what, soul beasts will always be enemies to humans. Only those spirits who have completed a contract with a soul master and fused into that person's body will become your true companions and friends. However, how are you going to find suitable soul beasts? This task will be very challenging for you, and only us soul beasts can help you with that. If you guys can establish an effective organization, then I will send a representative from my side to join in as well. The title Doluor's eyes sparkled when they heard his words. Soul beasts entering the organization wasn't a bad thing. Actually, it was great. This meant Di Qian had basically approved this experiment, and when Di Qian eventually sent someone to this organization, the Great Star Do Forest would naturally assign those soul beasts that needed the spirit fusion. This meant the fusion of spirits would become a lot simpler. Alright, let's do it. The body sect supports this decision. Dubuzi contemplated momentarily before he suddenly slapped his thigh forcefully. He was the first to express his approval. Elder Xian was sitting beside him. He twitched his mouth and said, even though I admire you giving your approval, can you not slap your thigh next time? How painful can it be if I slap myself? Dubuzi didn't seem embarrassed at all. Instead, he seemed very proud, and Elder Xian shook his head in exasperation. The other title Doluor deliberated for a moment before they also expressed their support, one after another. Of course, their support was not enough. This matter was very important, and still required support from the Doluor continent's three native empires before it could be rolled out officially. The appearance of spirits had changed the Doluor continent irreversibly. No matter what, this process couldn't be completed so quickly. The incumbents were incredibly efficient for achieving an agreement like this within 2 days. Hu Yuhao exhaled deeply and quietly. He had finally managed to take this step, and all sorts of refinements and adjustments were coming, but his main task was to teach this contract to others and plan everything. He had to gradually withdraw from being the core of the research into spirits. Elder Xian looked at Hu Yuhao with a pleasant and satisfied look in his eyes. Ever since Hu Yuhao took the initiative to step forward and handle this matter with spirits, he had been very reasonable, and he had handled everything very well in all aspects. However, a dark shadow flashed across Elder Xian's heart. Elder Song and Xian Linyi had told him about the army of undead. He did have some understanding about this ability of Hu Yuhao's, but this army of undead came from an evil soul master's powers, after all. If Hu Yuhao was to take over as the master of the Sea Gods Pavilion in the future, a blemish like this would cause great inner conflict within the Sea Gods Pavilion. In the end, evil soul masters had great difficulty controlling their state of mind. What was even more frightening was that Hu Yuhao was simply too talented and prodigious. If problems began to appear in his mentality, when he became a titled Doluor, disaster would follow. Such a disaster wouldn't just include Shrek, but might also spell disaster for the entire continent. Elder Xian wasn't the only one with this worry. Elder Song and Xian Linyi shared the same concerns. However, they didn't spread what they knew about the army of undead, and only the few of them knew about Hu Yuhao's undead army within the Sea Gods Pavilion. In the end, the battle was very intense at that moment, and only those powerful individuals who were stationed on the northern and western fronts, who were observing the soul beast's movements on the periphery, could see this army of undead. However, only the three of them knew that this army had something to do with Hu Yuhao. Elder Xian no longer bothered with Dubuzi. He turned to Hu Yuhao and said, Yuhao, have you considered how you're going to establish this organization? What will it be named? Everyone was discussing things among themselves, but now their eyes returned to Hu Yuhao. After Hu Yuhao rescued those hostages at Sunrise City, and with his discovery of spirits, Hu Yuhao shared the same status as those powerful titled Doluor. They understood that this creative and ingenious prodigy from Shrek Academy would undoubtedly become one of the strongest individuals on the continent in the future. Establishing a supervisory body that was shared among the three empires, and forming a conference hall of soul masters for decision-making was as generous as Shrek could be. The various powerful individuals wouldn't say too much about how the organization was going to be established, what it was going to be named and whatnot, because as the inventor of spirits, Hu Yuhao had the most right to make these decisions. Hu Yuhao thought for a moment, then answered, the main purpose of this organization that we are going to establish is to focus on reducing the killing of soul beasts by humans and to gradually change the relationship between humans and soul beasts. Doing so will catalyze the completion of the equal contract between humans and soul beasts, and spirits will be a way for soul beasts to transmit their spirits on. Why don't we call this organization Spirit? My teacher, the one who taught me how to execute this contract, left another secret method to create a magic formation in the shape of a tower so that the process of transmitting spirits will become easier, and so that a soul master's spiritual power can be more condensed. Therefore, our organization will be called the Spirit Pagoda. How's that? I suggest that Shrek City construct the first Spirit Pagoda. At the same time, the Spirit Pagoda's headquarters will be located in Shrek City. Shrek Academy is recognized by all three empires as a public place, so establishing the tower's headquarters in Shrek City will be most appropriate. After the first Spirit Pagoda is completed successfully, the second batch of towers will be established within all three empires' capital cities. These towers will serve as emblems for the organization, and they will also transmit spirits at the same time. My suggestion is for the third batch of towers to be established in cities that are relatively closer to soul beast habitats. This way, transmitting spirits will become a lot more convenient. As for how the organization will be established and what the rules will be, I'll have to ask you and the Academy to decide that with the Empire's top officials. The Spirit Pagoda was called a tower, but in reality, more of how it was named was because Hui Yuhao wanted to commemorate his teacher, the Calamity Necromancer Electrolux, who had passed away. Electrolux once said that one of the proudest things that he had done in his life was that he had once erected an eternal tower. Hui Yuhao had never seen that tower, but that tower was undoubtedly what his teacher liked most. He decided to name this new organization as a tower to commemorate him. Elder Xian tilted his head as he listened to Hui Yuhao's words. He was very satisfied with Hui Yuhao's suggestions. The organization's name wasn't that big a deal, as it was just a label. What was more important was that Hui Yuhao had suggested that the Spirit Pagoda's headquarters be located in Shrek City. This meant that forces from all over the world would deploy powerful individuals to be stationed at Shrek. At the same time, the second batch of Spirit Pagodas would come long after the first one was constructed, because the first tower had to train sufficient soul masters with spiritual-type martial souls, so that they could expand their organization. After this period of time, Shrek City would undoubtedly wield absolute authority over anything with regards to transmitting spirits. If the Great Star Do Forest cooperated with them, it wouldn't take long for Shrek City and Shrek Academy's status to rise by yet another level on the continent. Hui Yuhao didn't swallow the secret of spirits by himself, yet he also helped the Academy develop rapidly. What he had done was the greatest benefit that the Academy could reap. That gloomy shadow in Elder Xian's heart, because Hui Yuhao possessed necromantic abilities, dampened a little. At least, from what he could see right now, everything about Hui Yuhao was still normal. Elder Xian didn't express his opinions directly. Instead, he turned to everyone else and asked them, "Does anyone have any objections to Yuhao's suggestion?" This group included Dubuzi, and these powerful individuals shook their heads and expressed that they had no objections, and that they approved of Hui Yuhao's suggestions. Shrek Academy had publicized the secret of spirits, which was a very important one, to the outside world. They were also going to establish an organization that everyone could participate in. The most important issue had been resolved, and it would be extremely shameless if anyone still didn't want to let Shrek Academy reap some benefits from this arrangement. Furthermore, Hui Yuhao was right. Shrek Academy had always been known for their independence, and they weren't biased towards anyone. Establishing the tower's headquarters in Shrek City was most appropriate, and even though Shrek City was inside the Heavenly Soul Empire, Shrek City was actually similarly distanced from all three capital cities. Hui Yuhao turned towards the beast god Di Qian, and Di Qian tilted his head in his direction. Di Qian also approved of his suggestions. Hui Yuhao would have to continue with his experiments, and all kinds of sophisticated and strict research would have to come next, so that he could base the abilities of spirits on solid ground. Other than that, everyone would have to deal with the various and numerous administrative tasks needed to establish the Spirit Pagoda. Those powerful individuals all returned to their respective empires. They brought their first batch of soul masters, who possessed spirits, to their empire's royal families to convince them. Everyone began to work on everything that had to do with establishing the Spirit Pagoda. Hui Yuhao spent most of the subsequent month on his experiments. Furthermore, experiments weren't the only things he had to do. He also had to draw the Spirit Pagoda's construction blueprints, and he had to record the spell for the equal contract and how to use it. This precious knowledge was sealed and stored inside the Sea God's pavilion. Nobody asked Hui Yuhao about his army of undead, and Hui Yuhao didn't return to Shrek Academy. Di Qian requested he remained in the Great Star Do Forest to continue his experiments, which also meant that he could let Shrek Academy's people see him, but they couldn't bring him back. Hui Yuhao didn't object much to those requests, and he spent the subsequent month working hard at many different tasks. Shrek City was also very busy. They had sustained heavy losses when the beast wave washed over them. Repairs required quite some time and a lot of materials and resources. Shrek's merchants and businessmen began to work on all fronts. Furthermore, after those soul masters returned to their respective countries, it didn't take long before the three empires sent diplomats to Shrek City to discuss matters regarding the construction of the Spirit Pagoda. Just as Hui Yuhao had predicted, not a single empire could resist the appearance of spirits. The diplomats sent forth by those countries were here to negotiate and discuss how exactly the Spirit Pagoda was to be established, and how this organization was to be controlled. The incumbents underwent a long and drawn-out negotiation. Hui Yuhao didn't even bother to ask about how the negotiations progressed, because these things were no longer important to him. He believed that everything would be fine with Shrek Academy at the helm. In the end, those spiritual-type soul masters that the Spirit Pagoda produced in the future would be called Spirit Masters, which would be considered a new and separate profession. The three empires dispatched representatives from their various sects and academies to become part of the Spirit Pagoda's conference hall. Every empire had 9 seats, and every member had to at least be a Soul Doluo. Every empire had to ensure at least 3 people, who were members of the Spirit Pagoda's conference hall, were stationed in Shrek City. Besides these 27 members, Shrek Academy would also choose 9 people to become members. Their status was similar to that of an empire, as they participated in the Spirit Pagoda's future development. All 36 members would control the entire Spirit Pagoda's operation and development, while the headquarters would still be established in Shrek City. Hui Yuhao had discovered spirits, so he was nominated as the hall's 37th member. Furthermore, only he would be a member for life. The Spirit Pagoda would have to choose 4 Pagoda Masters, 1 main one, and 3 deputies, to deal with daily administrative tasks and whatnot. Every 10 years, the Pagoda's members and its Pagoda Masters would be re-elected, while no member could remain in office for more than 2 terms. Only those who were members before could participate in the election to become a Pagoda Master. The Spirit Pagoda's first conference hall meeting was carried out in the 2nd month, after Hui Yuhao's successful experiment. Everyone nominated the Master of the Sea Gods Pavilion, Elder Xian, as the first Pagoda Master. 1 titled Doluo from each of the 3 empires, who were of good moral standing and reputation, were nominated as Vice Pagoda Masters. Hui Yuhao was a lifetime member, and he was appointed as the Honorary Pagoda Master. He didn't participate directly in the Spirit Pagoda's management, but his status within the organization was exceedingly high as, after all, spirits and the Spirit Pagoda wouldn't be around if not for him. At the same time, Shrek Academy fought hard to ensure Hui Yuhao become the only person who could participate independently in the election for the Pagoda Master in the future. In other words, he didn't have to represent the 4 different parties in the election. The Spirit Pagoda's various rules, regulations, and systems were being completed. After discussing things with the Great Star Do Forest, the Spirit Pagoda wasn't constructed within Shrek City in the end. Instead, it was located 5 kilometers outside of Shrek's southern city wall. This meant the Spirit Pagoda would be open to humans and soul beasts at the same time. Within the Spirit Pagoda's conference hall, besides its 37 human members, the Great Star Do Forest had its representatives as well. Di Qian personally led this group, and he was part of the conference hall, along with the Emerald Swan Bai Ji, the Demon Eye Tree Myriad Demon King, the Bear Lord, and the 3-headed Devil Mastiff. 5 savage beasts represented the soul beasts within the conference hall. 1 savage beast would be permanently assigned to the conference hall to participate in all sorts of discussions and administrative matters. Furthermore, the soul beast's representative would have a special status, and this representative would have veto power for the conference hall's decisions. Of course, this veto power couldn't come from just one of them. All 5 savage beasts had to make a decision before Di Qian could propose and use their veto power. The Spirit Pagoda's power and authority seemed split up, but in reality, the continent's 3 native empires, Shrek City, and the Great Star Do Forest all supported it. This meant that there was no other organization across the entire continent that could compare to the Spirit Pagoda's backing. The humans hustled, and the Great Star Do Forest didn't idle either. Di Qian personally stepped out to communicate with several other soul beast habitats, so that he could spread the situation about spirits to these other habitats. Hui Yuhao wasn't worried about how far Di Qian could go. With the Great Star Do Forest's absolute status in the world of soul beasts on the Doluo continent, convincing other soul beasts wasn't difficult at all. Probably only the extreme north, which was a place of bitter cold, was relatively more challenging, but soul masters rarely ventured there to obtain soul rings in the first place. 3 months quickly passed from the start of Hui Yuhao's first successful experiment, just like that. The Spirit Pagoda began operating on all fronts. The first batch of soul masters, who possessed spiritual-type martial souls, were selected by the 3 empires, and sent to Shrek City afterwards. Hui Yuhao was in charge of teaching them how to conduct equal contracts. Shrek Academy's soul masters were the first people to enjoy the benefits of spirits. Hui Yuhao directed everything personally, and more students from Shrek Academy, who reached bottlenecks, gained their own spirits. Over the past 10 years, Shrek Academy had gone through 2 different stages of vigorous development, with both soul tools and spirits, and Shrek City became increasingly powerful. Furthermore, the relationship between Shrek City and the Great Star Do Forest was being mended because of these new spirits, and Shrek City took this opportunity to rebuild and expand their city's surface area. They also made some long-term plans. Shrek City would be considered an inner city, and they would expand it 5 kilometers out from its city walls. 5 kilometers didn't seem like much, but those 5 kilometers were extended from Shrek City's original walls. Once these 5 kilometers were built up, Shrek City's surface area would be equivalent to any large-scale city in the 3 empires. The Sun-Moon Empire's behavior over these 3 months was relatively peaceful. Because of the Spirit Pagoda's establishment, the continent's 3 native empires didn't make a move against the Sun-Moon Empire, and this allowed Shu Qianran to heave a sigh of relief, to his own astonishment. Time was also exceedingly important for the Sun-Moon Empire. They had already spoiled their relationships with the other 3 empires, and a great war could happen at any time. The longer they could delay this war, the more time they had to prepare. Elder Di Qian. Hui Yuhao was still in the Great Star Do Forest's slaughtering grounds inside its core regions, and he called out while standing beside the water of life, as he faced the clean and limpid lake water. Over the past 3 months, the Spirit Pagoda had begun to take shape thanks to his hard work and efforts. Furthermore, he was the most welcomed human being inside the Great Star Do Forest. Just as Hao Wangqiao was treated back then, the Scarlet King became his personal bodyguard. Hui Yuhao could proceed anywhere he wanted in the Great Star Do Forest smoothly and unhindered. This place was considered a forbidden ground for humans, but this place was like his own back garden to him. "You're here." Di Qian's voice rang out, and a black shadow quietly appeared in the middle of the lake. This black shadow arrived by the lakeshore in a few flashes. Di Qian had already handed everything that had to do with spirits over to Bai Ji for her to manage. Over the past 3 months, Hui Yuhao had taught the first batch of spirit masters, while also helping multiple soul beasts, who were near death, to transmit their spirits at the same time. As of today, more than 300 soul beasts had been allowed to extend their lives. From the perspective of the soul masters that these soul beasts fused with, this fact was equivalent to avoiding killing over 300 soul beasts. These soul masters would still choose spirits to substitute soul rings in the future, and they would kill even fewer soul beasts. Of the 5 savage beasts, with the exception of the Bear Lord, who rarely showed himself, the other 4 savage beasts, including the Beast God, were very satisfied with everything that Hui Yuhao had done. Hui Yuhao bowed respectfully to Di Qian and said, "Elder Di Qian, the Spirit Pagoda's foundations have been established. This is the first pagoda, so its scale will be relatively larger. Therefore, I reckon it will take at least 1 to 2 years to complete any follow-ups. There are 42 soul masters in the first batch of spirit masters, and their cultivation ranks vary from 4 to 8 soul rings. Under my guidance and my teaching, they are all able to conduct the contract on their own." Di Qian nodded and said, "You humans are quite efficient. I've heard about these things from Bai Ji." Bai Ji was currently the first savage beast to be permanently stationed in the Spirit Pagoda's conference hall to represent all soul beasts. After the conference hall's first meeting with the whole committee, there were over 10 members who had been permanently stationed in Shrek City. Including the 4 pagoda masters, there were 9 other members from the 3 empires, while Shrek Academy's 9 members were all members of the Sea God's Pavilion at the same time. Naturally, they were around, but in Shrek City instead. As for Hui Yuhao, he had been living in the Great Star Do Forest this entire time. He had been very busy over the past 3 months, but the Beast God had treated him well. He had provided Hui Yuhao with all sorts of fruits that were full of spiritual qi, and in addition to the fact that Hui Yuhao was transmitting spirits every day, his spiritual power became steadier and more consolidated, while his soul power was raised by another rank. He had used Shrek Academy's soul power detectors to test himself, and discovered that his soul power was at rank 73, which was a little lower than his original prediction. However, this fact also told Hui Yuhao that every subsequent soul power rank, after rank 70, was of great magnitude. Hui Yuhao estimated that, with his current cultivation speed, and if he didn't encounter any special circumstances, opportunities, or epiphanies, he would become a title Doluor when he was around 30 years old. That would be an absolutely outstanding feat among humans. "You were looking for me. What do you want?" Di Qian asked Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao contemplated for a moment, then said, "Elder, I have been accountable to you with regards to spirits. I wish to leave." Di Qian's aura instantly changed when he heard his words. His eyes suddenly became sharper, and he said, "What's up?" Is our great star dough forest not good enough for you? This place is full of spiritual chi, and so dense with life energy. This place is most suitable for you soul masters to cultivate. If you are willing to, you can even stay beside the water of life to cultivate. Your future is boundless. Hui Yuhao raised his head and stared right into Di Qian's eyes. Then, how long do you plan to keep me here? Di Qian was momentarily stunned. Hui Yuhao lowered his voice and said, you should know, elder, that humans cultivate a lot faster than soul beasts. Otherwise, we couldn't have dominated and conquered the entire continent within a few short tens of thousands of years. Yes, with my current strength, you can easily imprison me in the Great Star Dough Forest. However, I trust that you won't restrict my cultivation, because that is the basis of my life in the end. Choosing death isn't difficult for me, but if you allow me to continue cultivation, I will become a titled Doluor in about 10 years, give or take. I will take 30 years more at most to become a transcendent Doluor, and with the abilities that I possess, not even you may be able to stop me once I become a transcendent Doluor if I want to leave. I am connected to the fortunes and fate of the entire Great Star Dough Forest, so you can't kill me, and the most you can do is imprison me or seal me away. However, you should also understand my status in the human world. If you do that, the Academy will stop at nothing to turn the situation around, and the peaceful equilibrium that the humans have just established with your Great Star Dough Forest will change once more. Are you threatening me? Di Qian muttered coldly. That enormous pressure that felt like a mountain to Hui Yuhao appeared once more and pressed down on him. Hui Yuhao forcibly resisted this pressure, as he grit his teeth and said, no, I'm not threatening you, I'm just stating facts. I will always be a friend to the Great Star Dough Forest, and I can even promise you that I will never kill a single soul beast in the Great Star Dough Forest ever again. However, there are still many things that I have to do, and I can't stay here forever. If you insist on keeping me here, then I will choose death. Chua has given the power of destiny to me, and you can imprison me here so that I will never be able to leave this place, but not even you can stop me from severing my own fate and destiny. This means that nobody in this world can stop me if I choose to die. Di Qian suddenly withdrew his pressure. He placed his hands behind his back and stared coldly at Hui Yuhao. Where do you want to go? What do you wish to do? Hui Yuhao forced a laugh and said, there's something that I have to do, and there's someone that I have to visit afterwards. And then, I have to fulfill a wish that I've always had. Di Qian asked again, and after you do all those things? Hui Yuhao was a little taken aback. He shook his head and said, I haven't thought much about afterwards. Di Qian said plainly, since that's the case, then I only have one request. After you finish everything you have to do, you must return. You can choose to reside in Shrek City, the Spirit Pagoda, or the Great Star Dough Forest. All right, Hui Yuhao answered subconsciously, and his eyes filled with pleasant surprise in the next moment. Are you saying that I can leave? Di Qian was expressionless as he answered, I know that I can't keep you here, just like I couldn't keep the Emperor Beast here back then. With your current strength, people will have a hard time trying to kill you. Here, take this. Di Qian swung his hand as he spoke, and tossed something at Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao grabbed the item subconsciously. He looked down, and realized that Di Qian had given him something like a pendant. This pendant looked like a leaf, and it was about as big as an infant's palm. It was black all over, and there were ridges on its surface. These ridges shone faintly with purple hues. There was a single black line strung around this pendant, which didn't seem very thick, but was very tough. Wear this on your neck. You're not allowed to take it off. You can go now. With that, Di Qian turned around and drifted across the lake's surface. Hui Yuhao grasped the pendant, which felt faintly fresh and cool. He stared at Di Qian, who was slowly moving further away from him, and he instantly felt his mind and body relax. Waves of fatigue and exhaustion coursed over him as soon as he began to relax. He had toiled far too much over these past 3 months, which had been very tiring. Hui Yuhao hung the pendant around his neck. He wasn't hasty to leave. Instead, he crossed his legs and sat down beside the water of life and started to meditate. Hui Yuhao entered meditation very quickly, because his mind and body were relaxed. Flourishing soul power flowed through his body, and his immense spiritual power naturally rippled throughout his spiritual sea. This video will end here.